The superintendent come and speak with our parents, and we're excited this evening to have that opportunity and also bring Mr. Stoddard, the Director of School Safety and Security. Before we get started, I'd like to do a couple of updates real quick. This weekend, we have the Career and Technology Job Fair here at North Point High School. It's from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's open to all people looking for a career in the workforce, not just our career tech and education students, but also anyone in the community who would like to come. That's from 10 to 2 p.m. on Saturday morning. The following weekend at St. Charles High School, from 9 to 12, there's a CCPS job fair for prospective teachers. So if anyone knows anyone who is a recent graduate or someone looking to come into education, please make them aware. They can visit the CCPS website and get more information on how to register with the job fair. Please spread the word on both of those opportunities. This evening, I have a North Point High School student who would like to introduce our guests, and at this time, I'll call him to our stage, Mr. Christian LaFontaine.
Hello, everyone. Well, first, I would like to welcome some of our Charles County Board of Education members, Ms. Virginia McGraw, and Ms. Latina Wilson. So thank you, everyone, for coming out this evening. And I would like to introduce our two speakers this evening, our Superintendent, Ms. Kimberly Hill, and our Director of School Safety and Security, Mr. Jason Stoddard.
I'm going to start, okay, Jason? Yes, ma'am. Okay, good evening. As Christian said, thank you so much, Christian. My name is Kim Hill, I'm the superintendent here in Charles County Public Schools. And shameless plug, also on the day, on the 13th, when we're doing a teacher job fair, we're also in search of additional school nurses. And those are actually health department employees, but we are supporting the health department and seeking additional folks to be interested in serving as school nurses. So if you know anyone in either of those fields that are interested in working for a great organization where there's tremendous room for growth, Charles County Public Schools is that place to be. 32 years ago, I started as a teacher. Never ever thought that I'd be leading this organization. So it's a great place to work, and we'd love to have you or a family member come and work on our team. Tonight's town hall, thank you so much for coming, is focused on school safety and security. And we have at least one member of our School Safety Advisory Committee. Do we have any more members of our School Safety Advisory Committee here with us? I'd like to recognize Elaine Belson for joining us. The School Safety Advisory Committee is a group that we put together, over a year ago now, to tap into the wealth of knowledge in our region for folks who are really, really in the trenches when it comes to being experts on safety and security and intelligence and all of those things. And these folks have volunteered their services to us over a long period of time and helped us make tremendous improvements, which Mr. Stoddard is going to go over in a few minutes. The other piece that I'm very, very proud of, in addition to the School Safety Advisory Council, is the addition of a Director of School Safety, and that's Jason Stoddard. And I'll tell you, the man is an expert in his field and has really allowed me to sleep better at night because he is a constant focus on school safety and security. We focused on it before, but it was a part of a lot of different people's job, and they would come together in times of crisis and come together to plan how to act if certain events would happen. But Mr. Stoddard's expertise, his relationship with emergency responders throughout the region has been nothing but a significant add to what we are able to do as a school district. And so I'm proud to work with you, Jason, and pleased to have you on our team. Another little selfish point, before we get into school safety and security, I need your help. I was a principal here at North Point High School. The PTSO here was always a very strong group, and I appreciate that you all hosted us this evening. We are a great school system, but we're lacking in sufficient parental involvement. And I'm just going to say it like it is. Sometimes, the only time we hear from our parents is when they're angry about something or concerned about something. And we need you in more than those times. We need you daily in our schools. We need you daily in our ears saying what your experiences are like, what your children's experiences are like. So we've done some things recently to try to bring in our parent community because we know you all are busy. We also know that many of you are commuting into DC or into Montgomery County or into Prince George's County for work. So we know you're spending a lot of time on the road. So I'm looking for ideas. We've increased our social media presence tremendously. Has anyone noticed that? You've seen us on Facebook, you've seen us on Twitter. If not, I hope you'll follow us on both places. How else can we engage parents in our daily work besides the things we're already doing? What's working? What do we need to do better at? That's what your index cards and paper was about when you checked in at the front desk there with Ms. Mackey. So if you have ideas, suggestions, please jot them on that card and give them to me, give them to Ms. Mackey, give them to Ms. O'Malley Simpson, any of our communications team who is here working late. Thank you all very much to live stream this meeting. We want to engage our parents because I'll tell you the truth. A school system is only as good as the community in which it resides. I'll say that one more time. A school system is only as good as the community in which it resides. And so if we are not all in together, then we have untapped potential. We're not as good as we could be. And that's what I need your help with. So if you have ideas, if you have suggestions, I'm completely 100% open to them. Okay? All right, now we're going to move into the portion of the town hall related specifically to school safety and security. Mr. Stoddard is going to go through a couple of slides just to get us all on the same page. And then we're going to open this thing up to questions and answers, comments from social media. Ms. Taylor is over here monitoring social media, that if we have anyone who's sending in questions through Twitter or Facebook, we'll be able to announce those and address those if you all don't have questions here in person. So thank you again for coming. Another person I'd like to recognize, Linda McLaughlin, the president of the Education Association of Charles County, is here with us tonight. Linda, thank you so much. She gave the keynote. That was very good. We have an excellent relationship with our teacher advocacy groups, and that's what the EACC is. We also have a great relationship with our support staff advocacy group, the AFSCME group. So I'm proud of that, and I appreciate you being here, Linda. Thank you. Jason?
Thank you, Dr. Hill. For those of you who I've not had the privilege of meeting, my name is Jason Stoddard. I am the Director of School Safety and Security. I come to the system after spending about 20 and a half years with the Charles County Sheriff's Office, where I retired as a lieutenant. I had a wonderful career, but this job opening this position became new. I applied for it, and Dr. Hill humbly selected me. So I've been here pretty close to a year at this point, and I will tell you this is an amazing organization to work for. So as we start with this, we wanted to kind of give you a foundational piece of where we stood, what we've done. We did a town hall in August. And we wanted to make sure that we did a follow-up to that because unfortunately safety and security in our educational environments is still in the news because of some other events that have occurred. And we wanted to make sure that our community had the appropriate facts and so that they could make some better decisions on what we're doing and they could spread the good word of the things that we're doing in the community. So, as we get started, what I wanted to start with is our overall safety and security strategy for the 39 buildings that we have, the 4,000 staff members and the 27,000 students that we lead on a regular basis, is that it's comprehensible, it's scalable, and we're also looking to make sure that everything is intertwined. And you're going to see that as we work through this tonight how we've built different pieces of this to be intertwined amongst themselves. The first slide that we have up there is the grants that we've received so far this year. I'm very proud to say that the state has helped us, but we've been able to put in for almost, or a little bit over $1 million worth of grant money. Of that grant money, you will also see down at the bottom, about a fourth of that grant money we've spent towards enhancing our mental health services. And we've also spent roughly $100,000 with our public safety partners at the Charles County Sheriff's and the Parental State Police. Some of the things that we've been able to do with this grant money, we've been able to purchase or expand our mental health care to the Tri-County youth. So now we have a Tri-County youth representative in all 7 of our high schools. We also have been able to reach out and to put add additional bus cameras. So we have cameras on more buses now. We have a long list that I can talk to you in person if you want, but just to make sure that we continue to push through this as fast as we can so that you have all the time that you want to ask questions, please come see me afterwards if you have any individual questions. As we also look at this, we see that next year our grant outlook is about the same. We all know that Annapolis, especially this time of the year, is a fickle place. So they are working through all of what they need to do in Annapolis, but we are hopeful that we'll get about the same amount of grant money next year. So this really helps us because we don't have to go back to the county commissioners, and it allows us to move forward and allows us to do a bunch of different things to enhance our schools. So as we move into the next slide, these are some additional expenditures that we've done this year with the help of Dr. Hill and the rest of her staff. We've been able to spend $70,000 to put trauma kits in each one of our classrooms. So these were just ordered. The purchase order was just cut the other day. We worked with the Charles County Department of Emergency Services and Chief John Fowler to build a trauma kit that we can put in all of our classrooms so that if there is a tragedy, if there is an event in which somebody needs immediate care, we can provide that to them. Now, this is not just for active shooter events or other tragedies such as that. If you could think about it, if a young child is at elementary school and they fall off the monkey bars, and they suffer a compound fracture, and then maybe there's an arterial bleed there. We need to be able to provide that service because the time that it takes to get medical intervention there, we have to have the ability to treat that child as fast as we can. So they're not just for the active shooter or the other events like that. We're looking to make sure that our schools are as safe as we possibly can be. The next thing is the door numbering. I got an email today. I think they're about a third done. And this sounds somewhat strange that we would have to number our doors. We have 923 entrances and exits in the Charles County Public Schools. And anytime that the police respond to one of our schools, they need to know what door to go to. So if you look around, you'll actually see there's one right over here. They're on the inside of the doors as well as the outside of the doors. So we wanted to make sure that when the police were called, they know, go to door 32. This year is one of the grant requirements that we have, where we have to go through and we have to remap all of our schools and do a threat assessment for each one of our schools. One of the things that we're going to do with the piece of technology that we purchased is be able to mark each one of these doors and share that information both both in writing and over the cloud with all of our public safety partners so that they know when we tell them to go to door 32 that this is where door 32 is. The next thing up there is the guided vestibules. The guided vestibules was a project that was funded by the county commissioners 2 years ago. This is a program that we continue to push to get done. So far we've completed 12 guided vestibules out of the, I believe there was 34 that needed to be done. No, 20, like 30 that needed to be done. This summer we're going to complete 6 more. Berry Elementary, Barnhart, Smallwood, Malcolm, Summers, and Stedham will also all be done this summer. And if you can imagine having to coordinate construction at 6 different locations during a short period of window, it's amazing to see what this system gets done and the coordination and the teamwork that happens here every day. Educate elementary or middle schools like Pickawaxen and Hinton. If you've ever been to either one of those schools, they create a whole different challenge for us on how we're going to do that. In Matthew Henson, that school was built years ago, and when you enter into the school, you actually enter into there's very little surveillance where you enter in, so nobody can see in, and you actually enter into a stairwell. So people have immediate access to the entire school. So we have to do major construction renovations at that school as well as several others. So those are on the next couple of years' plans, but they are going to be done. The last thing that's up there this year, my budget, because this is a brand new position, we did have to request a new budget. If you ask any of my colleagues, you'll see that I spend their money very well. They will tell you that, and they really want me to have my own budget, so I stopped coming to them. And Dr. Hill really wants that because I spend a lot of money on her budget right now. So we have put into the county commissioners a request for my budget in my office, which consists of about 7 employees, $374,000. The next slide up here just gives you some ideas of some of the things that we've been able to accomplish this year so far. And this is not an all-inclusive list. Dr. Hill asked me early on to keep a list of everything that I'm doing, and my list is up to 7 pages long of everything that we've accomplished so far this year. So the enhanced background screening for all of our employees and our volunteers, so far we've had about 9,000 people that have completed that, so we have 9,000 citizens that are able to help to do chaperones. To be alone with our children is what we really looked at, is we wanted to know who was coming to our schools and spending time with our children unsupervised. We have had a very small percentage that we have had to turn away, so we know this is working. But the idea of this is not to keep people who made mistakes at 18 away from their children, because we know that they're different people. The idea is we want you to be upfront with us. So we've had about 9,000 people. We also do this for our employees, and we will continue to do this for our employees effective as of probably next school year. You will see all of the Charles County Public School employees having to do revolving background checks, and we will pay for that as well, because we want to make sure that all of our employees that we're putting in front of your children and building leaders of tomorrow are the best people that are there. So that's coming, and that's right around the corner. The next thing is our memorandum of understandings. We've been able to build several memorandum of understandings with different organizations, one of them being the Charles County Sheriff's Office. The recent memorandum that we almost have signed, it should be signed next week when the sheriff returns out of town, is a very comprehensive memorandum that when it's released, you will see how much work that went into it, and it's one of the most comprehensive that we can find from across the nation. It covers a bunch of different things. It's not just about the school resource program. It covers all kinds of different things about even how that our employees, or we will give access to some of the sheriff's office sworn personnel into our schools so that they can enter into during an emergency. How they share crime data with us. All those things are covered in this MOU. Our visitor vetting and our security program, we've been able to use our scholarship program, which many of you are familiar with, where we've enhanced that so that we make sure that we stay up on everything that's out there so that we know who's visiting and who's spending time inside of our schools. We've also built the next couple things that are up there, the anonymous threat, the bomb threat, the bus crash, and the hurricane plan, and the after-action reporting. We've used all of that to build guidelines. So that when we have these events, which we do, unfortunately these crises do happen, and sometimes they happen far too often, but our staff can pull out a guideline and look and see what they need to do and what needs to be done. It helps. Unfortunately, throughout my career, I've had the unfortunate opportunity to respond to a bunch of different crises. It is impossible to remember all the things that you should be doing. So we've also built an after-action report, and some other things that aren't up there that I think are important that we mentioned. Just so that you understand, we've partnered with the Charles County Sheriff's Office, and probably within the next month or two, you will see stop arm cameras go onto our buses. So we're working through contract issues. We're about 25% of our bus fleet. There's about 300 buses in our bus fleet with 26 different private contractors. About 25% of them will have stop arm cameras, and we'll begin to issue automated enforcement citations for people who run the stop arms. So that's a huge plus. We're the second county in the state that's done that. Moving on, as we continue to move through this, the student identification card, this is a program that we started earlier this year. We rolled it out in 3 schools, high school, middle school, and elementary school. We plan on expanding this to all the schools next year. We continue to look for innovative ways to use this. So far this year, we're using it for check-in and check-out, library, and lunch. Next year, we're also going to be using it for family unification, which you'll hear in a little bit. But next year, we're also looking to possibly partner with some vendors that are out there that allow our students to use their ID cards when they get on a bus. They can scan onto the bus, and you as a parent can get an email that they've gotten on the bus. So we have that technology that's out there. And we're trying to explore to put these ID cards in as many things of these children's lives as they can to modernize this system. If many of you wear an ID card every day to work, And if you don't remember your ID card when you go to work, how good of a day do you have? You got to turn around and drive back down 210 or 228 to get your ID card. So it's not that we want to start to have that effect with our students and to work these in on an everyday basis. The next thing is something that that I will tell you. I just returned from Houston, Texas, where I was at the National Summit for School Safety, and we talked about, all right, what we're doing here with the College of Southern Maryland. We've signed another MOU with the College of Southern Maryland to allow us, if we have to do a mass evacuation of any of our schools, they will give us the physical education building at the College of Southern Maryland. So if there's 2,000 kids, roughly 2,000 kids that go here to North Point. The PE building at CSM will hold those 2,000 kids. There's roughly 4,000 parking spots there, which we will need every one of them. That allows our parents to know right up front that if we have to do a mass evacuation of North Point High School, don't come here because your children won't be here. The police, the fire, the EMS, whatever the event is, they're going to be here. We need you to go to the College of Southern Maryland and pick up your children. It also allows us to build a process. So the staff at Central Office, we can train them to walk right out of Central Office. We can give them all the things that they need, and we basically have family reunification on the go. So we're building that process in. If you've ever seen any of the after-action reports of many tragedies that have happened across the United States, you see there's two things that always come up. One is communication, the other one is reunification. So we're trying to build that so that we can spend time doing the things that we need to do and to get your kids back to you as fast as possible. I've had a wonderful opportunity to make good friends with two mothers that lost their children at Sandy Hook. And it took them hours to receive notifications. And we owe you better than that. So that's what we're working through. The next thing, under Dr. Hill's leadership, we are expanding my office to include a residency investigator and a safety administrator. This person is going to be, believe it or not, there are people that don't live in our county and send their kids to our schools. And parents don't tell us the truth, believe it or not. So we also have people who are sending their kids to schools in areas that they're not zoned for. And that affects every child because it increases class sizes. So this individual will be responsible to go out and to do some of those domicile verifications and to do some of those investigations and assist the PPW, or people personnel workers. The other thing that this individual is going to do, it's going to be a 50-50 split. They're also going to be helping me and helping the system lean forward. I really believe that we can use a lot of the data that we already have to do some predictive analysis of discipline. And you can look at all of that data and determine when most fights happen or when most things are going on, what locations in the schools, so that we can put teachers and administrators to hopefully stop that from happening. Our goal isn't to just to put kids into the criminal justice system. Our goal is to teach them better ways of doing things. And we believe that if we can do that intervention through preventative measures, it will help everyone. You'll also see up here that we're also building these, we'll call them intelligence bulletins or situational awareness reports. I also introduced this in Houston, and this is cutting edge. I had some individuals that were there that were amazed at what we were doing, and we sent them a lot of the information that we were willing to share with our community, some of the threats that our community faces. This is the first one that we did on juuling as a result of some information that we received from one of our high schools. That juuling is a huge issue. Most parents don't understand what juuling is. Some parents are actually buying the jewels for their kids, and oh, it's not cigarettes, so it's okay. So we wanted to make sure that all the facts were out there, so we built this one. We also just built one on destructive internet challenge games as a result of the Momo Challenge hoax that was out there. We built one of those, and that is you'll see where those are going to be here in a minute. This is another thing that we're doing. We've built a what we call an all-hazard work group planning work group. When we bring all of our public safety partners in, we meet about once every 6 or 7 weeks. I'll have about anywhere between 15 and 20 different public safety and non-governmental organizations that are represented. This is not an all-inclusive list here. Thank you, Ms. Farr, for coming. She's from the United Way, and she started coming to our meetings. The United Way is an interesting partner because they can offer us all kinds of help as it relates to the family unification. What we did is I took the lessons that we learned at Great Mills. I was there helping them run command. We took the lessons of the people that responded to Great Mills, and we built a list of people that we wanted to get to know before the crisis happens. So that when our balloon goes up, we can reach out, and people know me as Jason, and they know her as Dr. Hill, and they put faces to names, and they're there because we built relationships with them. So that's what this is about. We talked about this in Texas as well, and this is something that even if you go to other locations in the National Capital Region and ask the police, ask the firemen, ask anybody else that works in public safety, how much contact do you have with the schools? They haven't been inside of them. They don't know them. And that's the last time that you want to be. The first time that you're in a school is when there's a crisis that's happening. So we're really trying to lean forward on as much of this as we possibly can. I promise you I'm almost done. I also think it's very important to understand, as Dr. Hill mentioned, about all the community outreach that we're doing. We're trying to reach out. These things that we're doing here, these doing town halls and coming out and talking to people, there's always that question, do we really want to do this or not? And the answer at this organization always is yes, because we have nothing to hide. This is about being transparent with the things that we're doing, because it's important. We have your most precious asset for 8 hours a day. And you need to know what we're doing. And you should never fear dropping your kids off at a school. And we take this very, very seriously. So as you see here, we have the Safety Advisory Committee that we talked about. We also have the Safety and Security section on the CCPS-TV.com. Miss Katie O'Malley-Simpson and her team that's in the back, they built that for us. And it's a very interactive. It's got all of our the situational awareness bulletins. Those are all posted there, the ones that we release to the parents. It also has some videos and some snippets and things like that, the things that we're doing. The other thing, we have the CCPS Twitter page, Facebook page, and all of that interaction. Katie has allowed me to have my own. So I have it's under CCPS Safe. I would ask you, please follow that. Please have your kids, if you allow your kids to have cell phones, please follow that. The reason is because there's 2 places during a crisis that you're going to get verified information. One is coming from CCPS's social media outlets. The other one is from mine. Anything else that you hear from any of those other community groups or anything else is not going to be verified. If you want the information as fast as you can, those are the 2 places to go. I'll give you a great example. Several weeks ago, we had an elementary school that we thought we had a fire in. It was very cold outside. We had evacuated 700 kids out to the cold. We had a lot of parents that were very afraid. People driving by on Smallwood Drive, and they see a bunch of kids standing outside without coats on, and it's 32 degrees. It's kind of odd. So people started asking questions. We were able to fill that gap of information with the facts, and the response that we received from a lot of our parents was very positive. Thanks for sharing, letting us know what's going on, and that's what we want. We also host some parental workshops. There's a couple of flyers back there. There's an upcoming Project Innocence workshop being hosted by the United States State's Attorney's Office out of Washington, D.C. We've had 2 of these before. The next one's at Mattawoman Middle School right around the corner here. Please attend. Those workshops we do all the time because we want to be engaged in the community. We have some printing and some training materials as well. As I close this out, these are some things that are important that are coming up. Obviously, it's the end of school. We all know that's coming, but prom season actually started last weekend. It will continue for the next 6 or 7 weekends. Those are important because there's 2 proms that are in the county this year, the other 5 are not. However, there's more kids on the street. There's also the opportunity for more people to be out late. There's other things that go on with prom. We also have standardized testing, and the graduations are coming at the end of the year. The standardized testings are important because we can kind of predict when standardized testing happens, stress levels go up in kids. Stress levels go up in teachers and in parents and everybody else, every place else. What we see is we tend to see a lot of anonymous threats that relate around the weather breaking and also park testing and state testing and everything else, because as you remember, those aren't the favorite things to do. So it's amazing when you start to look at a lot of anonymous threat reportings. They tend to happen when testing is going on. It's the first day that it's 70 degrees out and there's a carnival going on across the street. It is no wonder that we had a threat that day, because where do the kids not want to be? Graduations are upcoming. That's a huge thing that we do here. We have 7 graduations over a 3-day period, 2.5-day period, all hosted here. And that's a lot of transition out in the parking lot. So, with that said, I'm done. So thank you for hanging with me. I know it was probably a little bit longer than what you thought.
So thank you, Jason. I am so blessed to have such an amazing team around me, and Jason is just one example of the expertise that you have in your school system to make sure that we're doing things that we need to do for your children. 2 more of our board members snuck in while we were talking, and I want to make sure we recognize them. Ms. Liz Brown, thank you very much for being here, and Mr. David Hancock over on this side. Thank you. We are blessed to have a very supportive elected Board of Education. They are involved in our activities, they are involved in our subgroups and our committees, and we appreciate their support. One more example that I just have to brag about when we're talking about interagency cooperation. 2 weeks ago at St. Charles High School and Westlake High School, the Waldorf Volunteer Fire Department put on an activity called Every 15 Minutes. And I don't know, raise your hand if you've ever heard of Every 15 Minutes. Good. To witness that, we bring all of our 11th and 12th graders out into a parking lot and put them in temporary bleachers and stage an accident, where students from the school are acting as though they've been injured or killed or are drunk and have driven a car. The law enforcement arrives, EMS arrives, the gigantic fire trucks arrive, a Maryland State Police helicopter comes, hovers, circles around several times, lands, and then they take away, in a mock way, the victims from the accident. That's not just it. Then it all transfers to the county courthouse. And we have volunteer judges, volunteer prosecutors, volunteer defense attorneys, real professionals in their field, standing in a real courtroom with a real judge. And these kids are playing the role of the drunk driver, of the victim. Parents are playing roles of the parent of the victim. And it is just an amazing example of how this community comes together. So, Jason, thank you. We're going to sit down and we're going to take your questions. Are there rules, Ms. O'Malley Simpson? Yes, there are. There are some folks who have signed up. Okay, so Elaine Nelson, Von Tasha Sims, if you all would come to the microphone and we'll get you started. And we'll also be monitoring any questions we may get through social media.
What are the stats, say for the past year, on threats of safety and violent altercations? Do you have that?
So the other day I had a discussion with Dr. Michael Blanchard, who runs he's in charge of all of our school psychologists. So far this year they have done over 80 what they call safe assessments, which means that many different things that would fall under a safe screening would be, kids that were threatening other children, kids that were threatening buildings, anonymous threats, things like that. So we've had about 80 or a little bit over 80 thus far this year where there's been a safe screen that's been completed.
And what about like fights?
I couldn't begin to give you the amount of the numbers of the statistics on fights. What I can tell you is the Maryland Department of Education has recently released some statistics as it relates to interventions with law enforcement and our students. The Charles County numbers, while entirely too high, still are much lower than all of our counterparts around here, Calvert, St. Mary's, as well as Prince George's, obviously. But the one thing that we still struggle with, the highest interactions that law enforcement has with our students are altercations. And we continue to look for as many different ways as we can to build in as many outlets as we can, whether it be through restorative practices or restorative practices or through de-escalation techniques and things like that, to try and give kids different ways to deal with their aggression, to deal with the hostility or issues that they may have. Sometimes it's highly successful. We still have to teach children how to behave at times, and still have to teach children how to make better decisions. But we also can't forget that they're also kids. We're dealing with developing adolescents. They're under much more stress than I think we ever were. If you can imagine what your life would have been at 16, 17, 15 with a cell phone, and when you start to look at that, you begin to understand a lot of these stresses that the kids are under as well.
Additionally, we're doing a lot of work through our principals, and they are filtering that down to their staff at their schools on relationship building and communication and understanding the root of some behaviors. You know, there are times when you're a classroom teacher and a child is acting out, and sometimes the classroom teacher takes that personally, and they think, why is he acting like that in my room? When really the question is, what's going on with this child? And so we're trying to shift the mindset of the adults that work in our school district, as well as the students that work in our school district, that there are other ways to solve problems other than resorting to physical altercations. But we're not there yet. I mean, we have entirely too many physical altercations, and we're working on that. But through the additional mental health services and the additional training of our staff, we're making moves in the right direction. Can you read that?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
Kinda,
good.
sort of. So we received one of the questions that we just received was discussing about peer-to-peer violence or bullying and what we're doing with bullying. And the second portion of it is what are options for parents that have students that have experienced violence at school or bullying at school. Bullying continues to be a hot button topic all across the nation, and we continue to try, and the first portion of dealing with bullying is that relationship building, and also offering those peer-to-peer services, offering how to deal with anger issues, how to deal with issues that don't result in lashing out physically between two students over something that most of the time they don't even know why they're angry at each other. And trying to figure out and understand that some of the things that they may be exposed to outside of schools, those behaviors are not acceptable not only at school but also as an adult. And much of that we do as much of that as we can, but I think that speaks directly to what Dr. Hill started off about tonight, is how do we get more parents involved? And how do we get our parents to understand some of the things that are going on inside of our schools, and the amount of supervision that their kids they still need, and the mentoring that they still need. I will tell you, we do our part. This organization is amazing at what they do, but we need everyone's help, and it truly does take a village.
The other thing that we haven't mentioned yet is our See Something, Say Something anonymous reporting site. So I hope that you've heard of that. Have you heard of See Something, Say Something? I'm still wearing my gray and burgundy rubber bracelets. We gave one of these to every student in Charles County Public Schools after the Stoneman Douglas tragedy in Florida, because 9 out of 10 times, if something tragic is going to happen, someone knows about it. And we just need to give them a way to report that anonymously. And so this website has to date had about 150 reports. Many of them are bullying reports, and we filter those. Every report is responded to, and I'm very proud to say I see all of the reports, but I can also see my team responding to the reports like that. And so the responses are made, and we push these bullying incidents to the appropriate people. The state has come up with a form for bullying. We report the incidents of bullying to the State Department of Education every year. What I would also caution everyone about is that some people think that what is teasing, a one-time or two-time only thing, they call it bullying, and it's really not the same. Bullying is something that happens consistently and repeatedly over time, whereas teasing is something more like what you and I may have witnessed or experienced in our school days. So please, with bullying, encourage your child or yourself to report that on our anonymous website, See Something, Say Something. It's at ccboe.com. Ms. Sims?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello, how are you, everyone? My name is Vontasha Sims. I'm not only a concerned parent here in Charles County, I'm also elected official here in Charles County and a mental health advocate as well.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing
is it
you.
on? Hello? I'm sorry. Yes, hello, everyone. My name is Vontasha Sims. I'm a concerned parent here from Charles County, Maryland. I'm also elected official here in Charles County. I'm also a mental health advocate here in the state of Maryland as well. I'm concerned about several issues that's been going on here in Charles County. I have 2 children who have graduated from Charles County school system. I have another son who's a senior now at Thomas Stone High School. Actually, he's a junior at Thomas Stone High School. There's 1 year left. Also in special needs and things like that. I deal with a lot of children as far as that is concerned as well. I just wonder, when it comes to your disciplinary policies, how many children that may be suffering from those areas or special need children are considered to have disciplinary problems or disciplinary issues? And also when it comes to our children at a younger age as well, I know some people in the community have a concern that you're trying to implement a program, the Fresh Start program, that may allow our children as young as pre-K to second graders to be able to be shipped to a facility such as Stedham, which is an alternative school for older children. So some people, we really do have concern about allowing children at that young of an age not to be able to be taken care of in their own school zone. That creates another whole situation as well when it comes to children, especially as young as pre-K or second graders. So I would like to know what exactly is that plan? What does that entail? What qualifies a child that young to be able to be in a situation like that? And what do you hope to gain out of that program?
That's a great question. And first of all, thank you for the work that you're doing in the mental health area for children. That's something that needs to be addressed across our country, and I appreciate what you're doing here locally for our kids. The first question that you asked was about discipline and special needs students. We currently have a discipline review committee working. They've been working, it's made up of parents, board members, teachers, students, and administrators. Several of our committee members are here tonight. We've had 4 meetings. We've been meeting weekly to review our student code of conduct. And that student code of conduct, I hope you know what that is that list of guidelines that guides our administrative teams in doling out consequences for inappropriate behavior. So when we think about consequences for behavior, what we want to do is to teach appropriate behavior. Punishment for punishment's sake really isn't very effective. A consequence for a misbehavior that teaches a more appropriate behavior is effective. So that committee is doing its work, and their information is on our website also, that you can look at all the meeting materials. You can look at, we put some charts there regarding number of incidences. I don't want to call out numbers because I don't want to give you the wrong information, but that information is there under Discipline Review Committee. Second part of your question about the Fresh Start Academy. So you seem to have a lot of knowledge about it. I'm not going to assume that everyone does, so I'm going to step back for a minute and explain. The Fresh Start Academy is an initiative that we're getting ready to launch next school year to address some of our neediest K through 2 students. What we have found last year and this year is that we have probably less than 2 hands full, so less than 10 students across our district who have come to us at a very young age with very significant needs. And when we have tried to meet those needs in the regular school, let me put it very bluntly, in many cases we've fallen short because the regular school environment doesn't have the supports that some of these very needy children have. And by needy, I mean they have significant behavioral and mental health needs. So what we did this year was we established a program in the elementary schools called Aspire. Has anyone heard of Aspire? A couple people. So Aspire is in, I want to say 3, it could be 2 or 3 of our elementary schools. And what that consists of is a separate classroom with a psychologist, a teacher, and an instructional assistant specifically hired to work with students with significant needs. And that program is working very well in the couple of schools that we've been able to implement it in. But what we found is that we don't have either the space in all of our elementary schools or the ability to hire enough resources to be able to put an Aspire program into 22 different buildings. So we began then, as a team, brainstorming, how do we then address the concerns of a 6-year-old who comes into a school building and literally flips every desk in the classroom over, throws the chairs. The teacher has to remove the 26 other students in the room from instruction because this young child, male or female, is having an inability to cope with something. So what we had was the pressure of the parents of these 26 other children saying, what about my child's instruction that day? It's nice that they got to go to the media center, but what about reading class? While Johnny or Josephine was cooling off from his or her outburst in the regular classroom. So we had that tension between meeting those two needs. So we came up with the idea, and we didn't do it on our own. We looked around the state. There are 10 other school districts in Maryland that have similar alternative programs for very young elementary children. We talked to our colleagues. We said, what's working, what's not working? And we're going to establish this program. You mentioned that it's at the Steedham Center, and some of the concerns that I've heard are that because the Steedham Center is sometimes thought of as a place for bad kids, which is entirely not true anymore. Again, entirely not true anymore. There are so many very significantly great programs at the Steedham Center, including a pharmaceutical program, a physical rehabilitation program, other CTE programs, an opt-in program, a virtual academy program. What we saw was that in the Steedham Center, we had an adult program that was moving out. And we said, hey, we have space here that we could bring in an architect, professionally designed for elementary age kids, and develop a cutting-edge program to meet the needs of students who are having trouble coping in the regular classroom. Now, the idea is not to do this instead of suspending kids, because I'm sure you know, Ms. Sims, there is a piece of legislation that tells us that we are not permitted as school districts to suspend pre-K through second grade kids. And I see why that makes sense, unless you've met a 6-year-old who has so many tremendous needs that we need to do something. And before these alternative programs, sometimes that something was suspension. So the child could have a timeout, so the school could have a timeout, so the teacher and the other kids in the room could have a timeout to cope. What we're doing with Fresh Start is not suspending. There will be a process at the school level that will include the child's parents to say, okay, we've tried X, Y, Z at school. This worked, these two things didn't. We have this other option. Does the team of professionals think this other option might make sense to try? And so that's what Fresh Start is about, is trying something different to provide supports. It is not permanent. It is not designed to keep kids away from their home school. That doesn't make sense for kids. But our thought is that we can help a K through 2 student learn the coping mechanisms he or she needs as a young child, then we may not have the issues we have with physical aggression later in middle and high school. So, sorry, long answer to a question, but I just wanted to try to address all the nuances of your question. Do you mind coming up to the microphone so everybody can
Yes,
hear
ma'am.
you?
I do understand exactly what you're saying, but once again, as an advocate and once again as a parent of a special needs child, I know that there are degrees when it comes to seriousness of children who may be suffering from disabilities and things like that. And I do know, unfortunately, sometimes children in those situations who may suffer from issues or disabilities, who feel as if they become further isolated and put into a situation where they're once again isolated, it causes a further issue within itself. We know that children always learn better when they're around their peers, when they're around children of their own age as well. So we would rather try to see things before we get to that point of sending that small amount of children and spending that much amount of money, or maybe not even a dozen children in the county. I would think that ways could be better found in order to accommodate those children within their school system, or within their school zone.
I hope that everyone, and Ms. Sims, you understand that we are full believers in inclusion for special education students, and this Fresh Start Academy is not designed for special education students. It's designed for any student who needs additional support. But I hear your concern, and I appreciate your concern, and I can tell you that that's not our intent, to remove kids or isolate kids, because we believe in the value and the power of inclusion when it comes to all of our students. Thank you. Ms. De Silva, and then Ms. Adeleke. Hello.
Is this just for North Point, or is this is, so these parents are representing all parents? And they were all invited? And this is the number? Interesting, okay. Thank you for that clarification. I thought this was North Point only, but based on the comments, I started thinking, okay, maybe not.
This was pushed out on our social media platforms and was advertised countywide.
Okay.
North Point is the host.
Okay.
And we appreciate that, but all parents were invited.
Thank you for that clarification. I am newly retired. I am raising my last child, who's now attending here at North Point. My oldest is 25, graduate of North Point, whenever that was. But my comments and concerns. One is, I wasn't even sure how I knew about this tonight. I know I got it somewhere, whether I thought it was an email from the school about a town hall at North Point. But I got it, I guess, from the media, but that's the problem. You started out this evening talking about the lack of parent participation. You understand the needs. I can tell you, I just retired this month, and I commuted to DC. I also was a diplomat traveling around the world, so I'm returning back to the Charles County after, going in and out for work. It's very difficult, and I love my children, as you said. They are my number one asset. I thought I was informed. I thought I was a good parent. I thought I was watching and informed about what their needs were and what the school's needs were. But I missed a lot, and I have to say that today in 2019, we must, the school, we the parents need to work together about how to communicate better. I attended a drug class. Quite impressed with what I learned. Sad that I had to learn it there instead of at the school, or feeling like, wishing I'd had the information prior to a small infraction by a certain child I won't mention. But, and I raised the question, how come I didn't know about these things? And in particular, and maybe I'm one of the ignorant parents, again, forgive me, I've been in and out of the country, I don't know, but, children are bringing bottles to school that have substances in them, and they're using them. Why are we allowing the students to even bring that? If that's the situation, if we have a drug issue or even alcohol, why are the schools allowing them to bring those bottles from home? I see the water contained right behind you. That's where the children should be getting their drinks from the school. They shouldn't be bringing something from outside if that's what's happening. Now, of course, not all students. Some students want to bring their own fresh water, whatever. But if that's a problem, then eliminate it. Overseas, one of the schools that my children went to, they had a problem with liquor, and they stopped it. They no longer allowed the children to bring in those bottles. If you were thirsty, you had to get a bottle from the school. So I want to suggest that, and many parents may have suggestions. It's sad that this is the representative of all of Charles County schools tonight, but we need to talk about why. And I can tell you, as a parent who commuted 4 hours a day on that bus, coming home and trying to make a 6:30 meeting during the week is difficult and stressful. And we may not even understand why is it important for me to be there. But we need to communicate that. So maybe we can have some ideas from some of us. I'm glad to be free now to volunteer some ways that we can improve communication. I learned about that. You talked, it's funny you mentioned that example, the 15 minutes. But we had an incident at Westlake, right? The same time that happened, or was it at Thomas Pullen? Something happened this past week. And the incident at the school happened the same time you were having an emergency testing thing at Davis. I learned everything about that situation online, whether it was the Charles County Facebook, whatever page it was. But that's how I got the information, not from the school. My daughter came in the house running, "Mom, what happened at school? Something happened as we were leaving." I shouldn't have to find out from that Facebook page, or maybe if that's the place to find out, great, it notifies you, but that's the technology we need to use. How are parents receiving their information? Making it easy. Maybe an idea is each school have a specialist that's just in charge with communicating to parents quickly as possible. All of these wonderful slides you had with the safety, security, that bulletin you had with all of the Jewel information, I like to know that. I don't know about Jewel. I don't know what it does. I'm learning. At first I was told it was a water thing. Now I'm learning that people put marijuana in it. I'm hearing all kind of things. I would like to know. But I don't know to go to your website to find that out. So, and I won't talk long, but the other problem I had this year was the parent view, student view. Again, maybe I'm late, but I came. Most parents, we had a full house on opening night orientation. You talked about everything. You told us about the parent view, student view. We need a demonstration. I had that thing for months before I really knew how to use it, how to really check on my child daily. Now that I know how to use it, and I'm sure I don't know it 100%, I'm checking it every day. It's very effective in me monitoring and helping my child and the teachers with my child. There are ways to reach us, but we don't know what we don't know. So until you reach us, we have to be more creative in how to do that. Maybe a Saturday town hall instead of a Thursday evening. Maybe for some of us parents who commute 4 hours a day, work 8 or 10 hours a day, maybe we wouldn't mind coming out on Saturday at 12 noon to listen to all of this information. So I'm willing to share with you. I applaud your efforts. I'm saddened to see such a short turnout, but I would definitely like to offer what frustrated me as a working parent who really wanted to be effective with my child and their teachers, but just didn't know how, didn't know all of what was going on, didn't know how important my involvement really was. Okay?
I appreciate those comments, and please use those cards that you were given to give us suggestions on how to communicate, because if you need information about Charles County Public Schools, you should be able to find it on an official Charles County Public Schools source.
My problem is finding it. I
Right.
don't like that incident that happened, thank God it wasn't at North Point. But, I don't know about the Westlake parents, but what if it was at North Point? I should have to find it. It should
Right.
come to me. The phone calls at 7 p.m. you have great, I'm sorry. You do things great, let me tell you that. The phone calls at 7 p.m. when your child is not at school. Excellent idea. I don't know why they didn't do that many years ago, but excellent idea. Parents are home by then, so we get the phone call. We make sure that our children are not intercepting the phone calls. The ID that he suggested for the bus, excellent idea. So I appreciate where you're going with this, and you can get more ideas from some of us. We can tell you. I can't speak for all frustrated, busy parents, but I can tell you what will make my life easier, and I'm sure I represent a good segment of them, so whatever would help me may help them, and then others can improve. Okay?
Ms. Adeleke. Oh, okay.
Just now that you mentioned, it's very unusual for no point, and the parental turn out to be low this way. I don't know, like she suggested, it's a great presentation you have today, and I'm surprised as well. Why is everything happening? I know there's a lot of sport with no point, but I felt maybe instead of something, this is very unusual for our turnout.
Thank you, Mr. Delicate. Thank you, Mr. Greavy. You're right. You have to go to the mic.
Well, actually, I hate to put you on the spot, so feel free to say no, but I was just kind of curious what you hear from teachers as far as, you know, the issues that they're having with kids, you know, in this realm.
Do you mind going to the mic? Just so our online audience can appreciate your answers. Again, this is Linda McLaughlin. She's president of the Education Association of Charles County, our teacher advocacy group.
What I hear from our members in the buildings is there is a problem, like Dr. Hill said, with discipline. And we are having our own discipline review organizing committee as an advocacy group as well. And we are talking about a lot of the very same things we're talking about at the discipline review committee that Dr. Hill convened. Teachers are also overworked, and the workload is huge, which the Board of Education just had a wonderful town hall, and thank you for listening to us and hearing our voices. And our teachers are doing the very best they can because parents are giving us their most precious resource, and we understand that. But there are many concerns that we have as well. Discipline, there's a problem getting enough subs to fill the needs that happen every day, and that is no one's fault other than there are not enough people to take the jobs. And so that causes a workload concern as well for the teachers that are present.
Mr. Silva, you could sign up to be a substitute now that you're retired.
I would love it. Thank you. I would love to be here.
I just did a training.
And there are a lot of opportunities for you. And so those are the things that I am hearing from the teachers, and that is something that the Board of Education is listening to our teachers, and we are working together to find some solutions. I know that's not a really specific answer to your question, but the same things that are talked about here are the same things that are concerning our teachers.
I have a private practice, and I have a couple of teachers that are patients of mine, and so I hear their frustrations as well.
So, thank you very much for asking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, first I just want to say thank you. I'm a newer parent here starting November, but I just wanted to say thank you for all that you guys do. I met Jason at a Westlake PTSO meeting, and it was phenomenal. It made me feel comforted as a new mother in this district. If I'm being honest, on Facebook and stuff, you hear horrible things, as Jason pointed out before, but my experience at Westlake has been nothing but phenomenal. The staff, the principal, I mean, everybody there is just amazing. So I just wanted to say to a couple parents, I think it was Miss Sylvia, addressing your issue, I think the biggest thing is communication. I think I've emailed teachers, I mean, I've been that annoying parent that just emails them left and right. And I have to say, there has never been a teacher that has not emailed me back within 48 hours, if not 24 hours. Any kind of questions you have, I've gone to my son's 9th grade administrator, Mr. Phillips, has been phenomenal. Even Mr. Griff, I think he's the 12th grade administrator, has been phenomenal. Any kind of questions, whether it be with the student-parent view or anything going on, the thing that happened at Westlake, we got an email within a very, very short period of time. So any of the parents that were there, they were informed right away. So I just wanted to kind of help you and just say that communication. If you have questions, if you don't understand, I know that as a new parent here, they are more than willing to help. It's just we have to just ask and just be there and be present. And I'm sure you do. Everybody does a wonderful job. I know my husband goes to DC, and I know it's very hard for him to get home. But and maybe this is just me because I'm a stay-at-home mom. I don't know if it's possible for people, because I know the PTSO meetings are one day a month. It's just one day, and I know it's really hard for people that work at, have government jobs. Is it possible for people to leave, say, hey, I have an obligation one day a month, I have to leave like an hour or two early? I know that's what I'm saying. I know that's really hard. I know my husband was just military, so I know that's difficult. But I don't know if it's possible for people to maybe say to their job, I know it's really hard. But all I have to say, one thing I really wanted to say was thank you guys for everything you do, and just email the teachers and administrators like crazy. Even if it's asking about the parent view, just, hey, can I come in with a counselor, and can you explain to me how to do this? And I know I'm probably preaching like a rookie, and I'm probably saying do this, do that, but I know that I've learned so much in my short period of time by just being that annoying mom that just is up at the school or asking a million questions.
And I applaud that. I really do. But I'm trying to give a voice to those parents
Absolutely.
that
Can't make it.
that are not doing it that way. We still love our precious schools,
Absolutely.
but we don't know what we don't know.
Absolutely.
I had no idea that the parent view offered as much information
Yeah.
that it does until I got to it. And I didn't learn that on the night of the orientation
Right.
when the rest of the other 500 parents
Right.
were here. And I'm just saying that might have been a time to go through a demonstration. Hey, parents, look at what this does. You can check the daily grade. You can check the daily attendance.
Right.
All of those things that are wonderful tools for me to help the teachers.
Right.
But I didn't even know they existed.
Right.
So without the communication, you're right, communication is key. But without that, and until you can reach the parents to get them to see what's really available to them, how are we going to know?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. What you said is so meaningful to us who do this work every day, because one comment like that from a parent goes so far in our community, where if I said something like that, people think, oh yeah, they pay you to do that, but those kinds of comments that can come up organically from where you sit, you just don't understand how meaningful that is. So thank you very much. And I can tell you our first-year principal at Westlake High School, Miss Diane Roberts, is doing a phenomenal job. And one thing that she said to me at a principal's meeting a couple of months ago now was, I'm afraid I might be over-communicating. I call those people all the time. And I said, Diane, has anyone complained? And she said, nope. She said, I swear I'll call them 4 times for something at the end of the week. And I just remind. And you're an example of that's working. So that's something I'll share with the rest of our principals. Thank you. Great, thank you.
Yes, you got to use the mic.
Yeah.
I had to use it, so you got to use it.
Hello.
Well, my name is Kay Wright, and I'm a parent, and I'm also the PTSO president. So I do agree, I've been the PTO president at Mary Elementary as well. I'm that person who goes to DC, make that commute every morning. I go in early so I can get off at a decent time. But I also volunteer as the PTSO president, and I try to do as much as I can to support the teachers. I say that because they do so much. We're the parents, and I don't know how much more we can look for from the school. Is it perfect? It's not perfect. Are we perfect? No, we're not perfect. But Parent View does give a lot of information. The PTSO meetings, I've been looking for a way. I'm from Mattawoman. I had a Zumba class. I did a Wonder Woman change. Did a shower, of course, so I want to run y'all out of here. And then I ran up here to try to get to this meeting to catch as much as I can. A lot of information is on the website. If you go on CCPS-TV, I believe that communication is somewhat of the issue when it comes from the school, but a lot of the information that they're putting out is on the website. The PTSO meetings, I'm trying to have it where we can have it as a conference call, so for those parents that can't come, maybe you can dial in and still hear the conversations and get the information that's being presented at the meetings. But volunteers, the harvest is plentiful and the volunteers are few. Whenever it's an issue, people are quick to respond. You will respond in a heartbeat, and you will have 100 different comments. When you say that it's a need, it's like crickets. When I need volunteers, I'm doing it. If I got to do an event, I got to do it. If I got to plan and I ask for chairs, I got to do it. If I'm looking for grants to get things done in Matter Woman and anything that I would like to do, I got to do it. If I want someone to help me plan an event or to do anything, I got to do it. But then when something happens, you got a whole lot of comments. So we just got to take a look at ourselves as parents, as community advocates, as grandparents, as aunts, uncles, or whatever role you may have in your student or child life or niece or nephew, and see what you can do for these students. These students need you. They need you, they need the teachers, they need the administration, they need all of us. I grew up with the phrase that it takes a village. I don't expect for the teachers to do everything. I do a whole lot. I want to use some other words, but I do a whole lot. I don't make excuses. I just daggone do it. Just do it. I volunteered as team manager for DI, and I didn't have the time. I did it because the county's paying for these kids to do it. The teacher, you have one teacher managing 4 teams. That's a lot. I didn't have the time to do it, but I did it. Just do it. Stop making excuses and do it.
I'm sorry. I just want to clarify. I hope y'all didn't take this as a complaint from me. I'm just trying to speak as a parent, honestly, give you some feedback because you preach it to the choir. All of y'all are the choir. Y'all the ones out here doing it, just doing it. It's the ones that's not here that need to hear this message. So I'm trying to give you insight as a parent who wasn't here and why. It wasn't because I didn't want to be. It's because I didn't know the need, a lot of things I didn't know. So, or I was exhausted, commuting. So please, I'm just trying to give you insight, okay?
100%, and you've initiated a great conversation. But again, use the note cards, use my Twitter, use my email. I read all my own email personally. If you have ideas on how we can better do our job in communicating, let us know. Okay, there was a...
clarifying question when you talk about bullying, and what is the protocol for a parent? The onus on the parent of either the child is bullying or being bullied, so people know what to expect and what to do and what not to do, so that the parents can do something that will be effective. Because we recognize that school can be somewhat limited. What does that look like? So for example, I get a call, something happened to my child, they've been bullied. As a parent, obviously I'm gonna go up there and have lots of things to say, very appropriately. But what is actually helpful? What is the protocol that will help move that situation in the right direction?
I'm going to start, and then Jason, you can jump in if you have any additional advice. As a parent, my first concern is my child. So if you get a call from the school that your child has been the victim of bullying or that your child is bullying someone else, there needs to be a response and a reaction from you at home, as well as a communication with the school to clarify all of the facts, to understand from the school's point of view and then from your child's point of view, so then you can triangulate, because none of us were right there. We're having to listen to everyone's view of what happened, and then staying in touch with your child about how to cope with that if they were the victim, or what is causing them to act out and bully others if they were the aggressor. I think that's the most that we could ask of you as parents is to really dig into what your child is either doing or being the victim of, and then remain in contact with the school so that we're a team. Sometimes I think some of our teachers, and Linda hears this I'm sure all the time, they feel as though there's an adversarial kind of relationship with parents, and there may not be. It may just be an assumption on both parts where there never was enough of a conversation to establish that relationship.
So what I'll add to this, and keep in mind, I'm just an old retired cop who's just starting to learn the educational system. And the 9 months, 10 months that I've been here, I have yet to meet anyone who tells me that they're a bully. Every person that I speak with, either on the phone or in person, has been bullied, but not once have I heard anybody say, oh yeah, I did it. And it takes two people. And this is where, in some of the most heated conversations that we have, is to understand that there is always going to be an investigation, and your kids don't always tell the whole story, and they don't always, because sometimes they're not capable of it, and sometimes they don't want to, just like you didn't when you were 16 or 15. And we do an investigation, and in many cases when we do those investigations, the facts don't match what the child has told the parent, and parents have a very difficult time accepting the investigation the information that we find. So as Dr. Hill said, it takes a team. We're all on the same team here, and we're all trying to do the same thing, and that is to grow the best leaders that we can. All you got to do is turn on the news for the first 5 minutes and see how many leaders our society needs. And we're all trying to do that all at the same time, and we're all on the same team. Keeping that open communication, that's a huge, huge thing. And understanding, sometimes you don't have the whole story. Sometimes we may or may not even be able to give you the whole story. But the decisions that this organization is making at every school level and at the central office is in the best, with the best possible intent in mind. Because we're here, the core mission of this organization is education, and they are very good at it.
One thing I'd like to add from an administrator's point of view is the process the state put forward goes for weeks and weeks after we check in on the situation. And that's because when you have a situation of bullying, when we first address the issue, it may not end. And I know that's a real frustration with parents to be called once. I thought it takes time to work through that. And so please understand, it's good for us to hear that. And we check in with the students, but sometimes the students don't want to report. So as a parent, if you're hearing this reoccurring, let us know. And don't be frustrated with us first. Know we're working on it too. But it's sometimes hard to stop those verbal comments and address those, in an effective manner the first time. So please work with us and understand it's a process that takes longer than perhaps the first time of discussion and trying to work through it. But it's really a process of addressing the issue.
And you've got it's a process. It's not a switch. So we just don't turn it off. It takes a while to work through it. It took a while to get to that point too. And it takes a while to work through it. So it's not a switch that's immediately going to stop everything that's going on. But the intention is to make it, to get there.
And I appreciate the challenge of the question because I haven't had children that have been in that situation often, but being a parent of young children, I ask often, what can I expect moving forward? Repeatedly, parents of older children have said bullying is a problem, the school does not manage it well. That may or may not be true, but my thought is maybe we don't know the protocol. So what something we perceive as not being managed, well, might be the protocol is that there has to be grievance or something of that nature. But just to clarify.
Great question.
As Dr. Hill said, the definition of bullying is something that most people don't understand. It's not rudeness, it's not teasing, and there's a specific definition. Academia is full of information on what actually is bullying, and I think there's a lot of people who say, well, that was bullying when it was a single event. And one thing that we all need to do is to be educated on that terminology so that we're all utilizing the appropriate terminology, because when we don't, when those severe cases of bullying come along, they become very difficult to weed out because everybody's calling everything bullying. So we need to be very careful with what we call it, and it's not what everybody believes. And there's a tremendous amount of information out there. And should we put more out there? Absolutely. Those arguments can always be made, and we do, and we will continue to do that.
Thank you.
There was one more, two more. Look at that. They keep
Come
raising
on up.
their hands.
Can you give an example of what you just said? What's not bullying and what is considered bullying? Yeah, because you're saying that, but what is that? What does that look like? What is
Whether it's
teasing?
bullying or something else, where is the line?
So bullying, by definition, you have to excuse me as I play with my phone here because I actually had a wonderful opportunity to meet with a young lady. Her name was Dr. Amanda Nickerson, who works at the University of Buffalo this last week. And she put up a slide because I had all these questions for her because, as I said, I don't quite get all this myself. And what she put up there was bullying is not being rude, is not teasing, and is not conflict. And the last one was not normal drama. Bullying is a repeated course of action that requires a position of power by the bully. And that's what we have to keep in mind. And that position of power doesn't necessarily need to be socioeconomic or anything else, but there has to be a balance, an imbalance in the relationship. And it has to be repeated, and there has to be at least 3 occurrences of it. Kathy Kiesling, who's our Director of Student Services, she is an expert at this. I can't tell you that I'm an expert. I can give you the little bit of information that I have, but that's a small snapshot of it, but it has to be repeated, and it has to be an imbalance of power.
But if the teasing continuously...
It can be. Yes, all of those things can evolve into it, but single incidents of it are not. So, and that's where the confusion comes from. There's multiple incidents of teasing, multiple incidents of conflict, they can evolve into that. Are those things that we need to address? Absolutely. Are those things that we expect our children to bring forward so that we can begin to address those? Absolutely. And we continue to do those things.
So you know how I think of it often, if we think about ourselves as adults and we think about ourselves in a workplace, and have you heard the term hostile work environment? So it's when kids are setting up a hostile environment with each other that is continuous. But here's the bottom line. Whether it's teasing or whether it's bullying or whether it's name calling, if a child is uncomfortable about something he or she may encounter when they're trying to go to their locker after 3rd period, because they know someone might be standing near their locker, then that's a problem. And whether it's bullying or not bullying, it's something that we as a school system need to address with you as parents.
And we have to know what's going on and building those open relationships.
This gentleman just said a while ago that they're afraid to report. Why are they afraid to report?
There's a number of different reasons. A number.
Is it because the school is not...
Because you just told us it takes 3 times, right? So is it you go to him and say, I've been bullied. Well, it only happened once, so it's not enough. Come back when it's happened 3 times. Where is the line of why are they afraid to report it?
If it's a single event, like Dr. Hill just said, we'll address it. Exactly. It's not like we're going to send the kid away. We'll still address it. To be considered bullying by definition is the 3 events. But if there's a 1 event that's brought, we're going to address it and try to work through it. If we find out by investigation it's really a disagreement, we're still going to address it. It's just not under the label of bullying. And so, at any point, we want to know why a student may not tell us. They may be embarrassed. They may think it's going to lead to more bullying, and that's where the parental support is happening. If their child's confiding this in you, if you let us know, there's ways we can address it without saying, "Mom, let us know," or even tell your child, "Yeah, come in and talk," because I can always address a situation as, "This has just come to me. A teacher observed this. You guys, something happened in the hallway. What happened?" So you can bring up discussion. This just came my way. So there's lots of different ways you can address it with a student where you don't have to say, "Hey, John said you were doing this to me." There's a lot of different ways to have a discussion with the student. But the barriers we get sometimes, the student just wants to go away perhaps, so they're not going to discuss it or bring it back. So those type of things. There could be a number of issues where they don't want to bring it up, but that's really where we need to work as a team. If you're hearing something, let us know so we can address it.
And keep in mind, we also understand, and one of the biggest things that we get is the fact that if kids don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable, they're not learning. Right. So just because we don't label it as bullying or it can't be labeled legally as bullying doesn't mean that it's right or that we're not going to deal with it. Mm-hmm. The principals and the vice principals and the administrative teams at all 39 of our buildings spend a great deal of time cultivating those relationships with those kids so that they will bring it forward. And each one of those events is looked into and is investigated because we know how important it is for our kids to feel safe and comfortable and sound at the schools. because they're not going to learn if they're afraid to go to school. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing at the school. Can we get better? Yes. Are we always looking to get better? Yes. Are we perfect? It's already been said here. No, we're not. But we are always looking to get better. We're always looking. And part of that is it all builds on itself. It's all very cyclical. Communication, coming to things like this, knowing what the facts are, knowing what the truth is, knowing what to call it. All of that matters.
And as Mr. Capel said, our administrative teams are really good at understanding that kids don't want to be the tattletale. They don't want to be that person because they think it's going to bring more ridicule upon themselves. So they're good at not
Snitching.
not revealing, thank you, not revealing the source. As Mr. Capel said, there were many times where he could say, hey, some kids in the hallway heard so-and-so say something to you. Did that happen? And then we also have see something, say something. That is completely anonymous. We have no way and no interest in tracking who reports. If you want to tell us who you are, great. But if you don't, just report so that we can address it. Okay, we are about 8 o'clock. Are there any last comments or questions? Please.
Yes, we did. The one question we got from Twitter in the last 15 minutes was, please come to the mic.
Not much for public speaking, so I'm just going to start. My name is Rhonda. I have 2 kids that go to La Plata High School, and with this recent incident of the kid in a backpack and the loaded gun and stuff like that, one of my kids is special needs. His problem is fear of school, going to school, school safety, and since the incident in Great Mills happened, he kept saying, well, why aren't there metal detectors? So I guess one of my questions would be, how did a child, because I don't know if it's correct or not, but the news and everything said that the boy was carrying the gun in the backpack since December. How is that possible to go on from December to now? Mm-hmm. And we weren't notified as it happened. I had to wait because some of us, at work, we can't check our emails. We can't go on Facebook or, the social media. You guys text us a lot for, information, which is great. But when things like that happen, I think parents like myself with a special needs child needs to know firsthand what's going on because he was there that day. And now I have issues getting him going back to school because of that situation. Another thing that I have is the student IDs. It's a good idea. However, I don't like the fact that there's a picture, the child's name on it, and I don't like that. Maybe the student's, the picture, the barcode, there's a barcode on it. The student ID number could be on it, but I don't like that the name is on it. And it's, I'm not speaking for myself, but I'm speaking for the elementary kids that are doing this too. They may not have that capability of saying, oh, stranger danger. Somebody can come up and say, hey, Johnny, can you come with me? Your mom told me to go, because the name's on the name tag and they have to wear it. I don't really see a point in all of that yet. I mean, if it's into play, I understand that, but there was also another incident at La Plata High School where somebody in shift changing or class changing outside, someone came, took the ID, was able to get into the school. They don't go there. So I don't see how the IDs are safety features. And I guess I'm waiting for metal detectors because I need to have my child go back to school, and I can't. So, and that's my difficulty right now.
I came prepared for you.
Yeah.
So I'll answer that. Lots to unpack, and thank you very much. Wonderful questions. A couple things. Let's start with the IDs first. I have a wonderful 4-year-old daughter, and if I give her anything, she loses it within about 30 seconds. And I'm not an educator, but we do have wonderful educators that work in the elementary schools that figure these things out. We understand that if we give a second grader an ID, it's never coming back. So that's not the plan. That's not what we're going to do with the elementary school with the ID cards. The idea at the elementary school level is this is a 4 or 5 year cultural and organizational change, and it probably starts in about 4th grade, 5th grade, where we start to have them wear them on a regular basis so that when they get to elementary school. You mentioned about the pictures versus and things like that. So we're exploring with the company that does that is things like wristbands that only have the barcodes on them. That don't have the identifying marks on them. You mentioned about La Plata High School. The interesting portion about the event at La Plata High School that you mentioned, the reason that they were caught so quickly was because they didn't have an ID, because they did take it from another student. So they were one of the few that were walking around that didn't have an ID around their neck, and they stuck out like a sore thumb. Understand that the IDs are not, while I talk about them because they are a portion of a strategy, they're not the strategy. They're a much larger portion of the layered approach that we're taking. And we understand that there's going to be bumps in the road, and we also understand that it quite frankly may not work. But the only way that we innovate is with the ability to fail. And I will tell you this, the woman that sits directly to my right, my boss, has given me enough rope to fail when it comes to this because it's worth it. When they did the news story about the ID cards that they did early in the year when we released this, Charles County Public Schools were the only one in the DC region that were tying it to different things such as their lunches, their libraries, their check-in, their check-outs. So many other school districts that have them aren't tying them to anything except for safety and security. We're trying to tie them to as many things as we can to modernize our schools, to help our teachers, to help our students.
And to communicate with you all also so that you know where your kids are. Eventually, we'd love for them to use their ID to as they walk into first period English class, they go beep and they sit down. The teacher doesn't have to take attendance. You know where your child is.
Those are years off. Those aren't things that are coming around the corner. And believe me when I tell you, we want to hear the input. But the one thing, when that was all released, there was a number of people on social media that I became the favorite piñata that day, and that's okay. But to think that we would roll something out without thinking about many things, all we're trying to do is to increase safety and security, to modernize our system, and to push and to teach our children so many different things. So that is still a program that's growing. It's still a program that we're looking at and we're exploring. It hasn't been fully implemented because we have 3 schools that are experiencing 3 completely different things. We just met with the 3 principals and the leadership teams of the schools to discuss what's working and what's not. And we got some very honest feedback. The one thing I'll tell you, our principals will give you honest feedback. So we're listening to try and see how it goes. You mentioned about metal detectors. I was waiting for it to come, especially in light of the La Plata incident. There's a couple things to understand. That's a real picture of a child going into a school being metal detected. And there's a few things that we need to understand. And one of the first things that we need to understand is our schools, the environment that we build around our schools, they have to be emotionally and psychologically supportive for learning. And it becomes difficult when we start to make them look like prisons. We can put moats around them, we can put concertina wire and build walls around them, but very difficult to encourage learning. The other thing is you hear a lot of pundits after all these events that happen, they start talking about, well, you got to go through a metal detector when you go into the courthouse, and you got to go into a metal detector when you fly at TSA, and you've got to do all those things. Those aren't schools. Those are not schools. A couple other things to understand. There is an issue with Maryland law. Our interpretation of Maryland law, along with my colleagues throughout the entire state, is Maryland law does not allow metal detectors in schools. What Maryland law says under COMAR is the fact that we have to have individual reasonable suspicion to perform searches of students. So that means I have to have a reasonable suspicion in order to search you. I don't have a reasonable suspicion of 1,100 children that are attending La Plata High School every day. I have some severe questions of whether that young man actually brought that gun to school. Some severe questions. Every day. Because he was caught for a reason that day, and knowing what I know about firearms after spending my entire adult life there and being a gun person, I have some very severe questions about whether that was a truthful statement or not. The other thing that there's many more things such as flow rates. We can get into the minutia of all that, but understand the average flow rates are anywhere between 120 people and 300 people per hour, and that comes from the United States Secret Service, the best group of people in the world that does this. That's for every machine. So every day, every time a kid, we do, so in the mornings when the kids come in, and specifically at La Plata High School and many of our other schools that have educational cottages, that's what I've been told to call them, when they have those children have to go through the scanners. And how much time that would take. Other things that it talks about up there, for it to be truly effective, if that's what you wanted to call it, and not just a false sense of security, you're looking at having these things staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and for every event. It's not just when schools are open, it would be for our staff as well. Think about the manpower that goes into that. It would have to be at every entrance, or every entrance would have to be closed and no longer an entrance. We couldn't make them an exit. We couldn't stop them from being exits, but they would have to, but every exit would also have to be guarded. If you've seen that movie Lean on Me, all right, we can't, the state fire marshal doesn't allow us to chain doors closed. They get really upset when we do things like that, and we don't do that. So every one of those doors has to be guarded. And we continue down. One other thing that I found when I did some research about this, our floors are reinforced with rebar and metal grates. And that's the way most of our schools were built, because they weren't built for this. When you go into an airport and things like that, the floor construction isn't that, because every time when you walk through a magnetometer, it can't be over the top of metal. That's why it's a magnetometer. So we would literally have to rip up every one of the entrances of our schools and re-pour them for them to be effective. And then you get into other logistics and manpower issues. These things, that while I understand there's a lot of comparison with certain things, I also think it's important. Forbes in 2018 wrote a report that said TSA fails to find contraband 70 to 80% of the time. And that was an increase from the year before when the report was 95%. So when we talk about these things, truly and honestly, physical security, we can buy all the things that we want. What makes us safe is relationships, knowing our kids, being able to see exactly what happened at La Plata High School with a teacher that noticed a child that was acting odd, acting unusual, knowing her place in our safety and security strategy and how important she was. Bringing that forward, and for our involvement with the police department and the things that happen. You mentioned about how quickly we get information out, and that's been a discussion all evening long. We can always be faster, but we'll never be fast enough. And at the speed of information that we have now, I mentioned earlier about the fire that we had, or the reported fire that we had at an elementary school. Before the fire trucks were on the scene, I was reading about it on Facebook. And the one thing Katie O'Malley Simpson and her team is so amazing at is that crisis communication. We have to balance the speed of information with the accuracy of information.
Right.
We always want to get information out as fast as we can, because those are your babies and we get it. But we do have an obligation to you as well to make sure that the information that we're providing you is as accurate as we possibly can. There's always that information gap that we're working to control, and let's face it, over the last several years, the speed of social media has increased threefold, and it continues to increase. And look at the number of platforms. Katie O'Malley Simpson's communication group is 3 people. And we have Facebook, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, Snapchat, and all these other platforms that we have to look at, and we have to be willing to, and we have to communicate with. So we are always trying to get faster, but we also have to balance that. Are we right? And when you start to include and intertwine, especially other public safety partners, now we have other issues that we have to talk about what is the actual information, because how annoying is it, or how unfortunate is it when one public safety organization shares information and then 10 minutes later somebody else puts another press release out and it's the exact opposite. Then a lot of that legitimacy, trust, and transparency that we all strive for in any public organization goes out the window. So we are trying. Metal detectors are not an answer for our school system. They're not.
There seems like there is no answer, though.
There is an answer.
My concern is this. Let me back up a little bit. On top of what Jason said about all of the facts regarding metal detectors, I have a student advisory group from the high school level, the middle school level, and the elementary school level. Last year's high school student advisory group, right after the Stoneman Douglas tragedy, all we did was talk about school safety and how they felt. Because what struck me about what you said is your child is now fearful about going to school. And that's the bottom line that we need to fix. I think what we're trying to make clear is metal detectors are not an answer. And I can tell you why I'm referring back to the student advisory group. A student in the group came from a charter school in the DC area where there were metal detectors, because the students said, why don't you get us metal detectors? And I said, how do you all feel about that? And we kind of bounced it around. I didn't have all the facts that Director Stoddard has. I just wanted to hear from kids. And this young woman, girl from a school outside of our district who had just transferred in said, Miss Hill, our school had them. I never went through them. The kids know how to do what they're going to do. And I just think our resources are better focused on finding someone at La Plata High School that your son or daughter trusts, that you and your son or daughter and that person can sit down and talk through what happened, where his or her fears are, and how to get over them.
And believe me when I tell you, there are two sides to every argument. I get it. And with the group, there's a group that believes metal detectors are the answers for our schools, and I understand that. But I also understand there's a whole other group out there that believes arming our teachers is also an answer to this crisis. That is not an answer for our school system. So the passion that we speak about on both sides of these arguments, whether it's metal detectors or arming teachers, there's a bunch of different people who believe a bunch of different things and bring a bunch of wonderful ideas to the table. Mm-hmm. As I told you on the first slide that I gave, our mission, I get paid to do nothing but think about safety and security for 27,000 students and 4,000 employees every day. Our mission is to do anything that we can that is reasonable and logical to keep your students safe. And we have to take that balance, and everything that we do has to balance. There is no one answer to all of these problems. There just isn't, and there never will be. So we believe mental health. We believe in building relationships. We believe in getting to know our students. We believe in building and fostering and sustaining environments where children feel safe, where our organization is transparent, and where we're willing to sit up here and to answer these very tough questions. The passion that is in this room is amazing about a lot of these questions. And we understand, and we do a lot of research to try and make sure that we're ready to go and that we're putting forth everything that we can to keep your baby safe, because it is very important to us too. It is the only thing that I get paid to do. And I would be more than willing, I put my phone number up there, I usually answer it, but I am more than willing to talk to anyone. And my phone is always on, my email is on, I have an office at the Starkey building. You're more than welcome to come to my office and sit down and talk to me, because that's what we're here for.
Thank you all for being here.
Can you make an appointment?
I'm sorry?
To make an appointment?
I would prefer that. You can show up. I may be there. Absolutely.
Thank you all very much. Thank you to the North Point PTSO for hosting us. We appreciate it. Yes, the cards can go to the table.